The NATO Secretary General must be a combination of soldier, leader, conciliator, diplomat and placator of political egos. NATO is perhaps at its most critical point in its history. So, what will be in the new Secretary General's in tray? And cometh the hour, cometh the man. Join me, Jan Darasz, for How We Got Here.
This man, Mark Rutte, has just scored one of the world's toughest jobs. As the 14th NATO Secretary General since 1949, he'll be leading history's most successful alliance during a time of strife, tensions and rising conflict. Already, he has taken the initiative and seeks to continue NATO's policy of having Ukraine's back through thick and thin. The message, in Rutte's case, is as clear as day.
NATO must and will do more to help Ukraine.
Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022 is one of the toughest tests that the alliance has had to face. Although Ukraine itself is not a member state, it is vital to NATO's security that it remains independent. And of course, it is hard to forget that Russia is a successor to NATO's former arch-nemesis, the Soviet Union. Rutte's predecessor, Jens Stoltenberg, had overseen the alliance's response to the conflict. Under his tenure, NATO redoubled its efforts when it comes to training army interoperability and developing defences along its eastern flank. Stoltenberg also played a role in putting the alliance's sights beyond just Europe and the war in Ukraine. He was well aware of Russia forming new bonds in the east.
We see how much military support Russia gets from North Korea, but also from Iran, and how China is propping up their war economy.
Yet the most important development that Stoltenberg oversaw, however, was NATO's most recent enlargement. The traditionally neutral Sweden and previously hesitant Finland joined the alliance in the last 2 years, turning the Baltic Sea into a NATO lake. Thus did Rutte's predecessor hand him a strong handover package, an alliance poised to reinvent itself to take on the challenges of the present day. The war in Ukraine and NATO's response to it aren't the only crises that the alliance had to overcome. In fact, some would say that these aren't the most troubling ones in the 21st century. Some would argue that it was Secretary General George Robertson who had to deal with the greatest challenge. When the terrorist attacks on September 11, 2001 shattered the idyllic sleep the West had been dreaming in over the 90s. What followed was the first and only invocation of NATO's Article 5. It was triggered after Afghanistan had refused to hand over Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda and the mastermind behind the 9/11 attacks. Did NATO live up to expectations in this conflict? Opinions remain divided, as a 20-year war in Afghanistan has tarnished the alliance's reputation in the eyes of many. And while there is much to criticize about NATO's response to the war in Ukraine, it seems that its leaders have been learning from their predecessors' mistakes.
Joining us today is Krzysztof Jaworski. He's from the Institute for Security and International Development, based here in Warsaw, yes? Welcome to the programme.
Nice to be here with you.
Great to have you.
Good afternoon.
Great to have you. We'll be discussing the qualities that are necessary for being the NATO's top job, for the NATO Secretary General. We'll start off with the new one, the latest one, Mark Rutte. What's your evaluation of him? Is he more of a politician, a conciliator, warrior, diplomat? How would you position him?
Mark Rutte is well known as a master of compromise, so his first quality, his first talent is being a politician. He led 4 different government coalitions in Netherlands during the last 14 years. He was 4-time prime minister, and he proved that he is really good at reaching compromise, at managing different viewpoints and different interests. So this is to start with. However, of course, it is not that he is only politician. He is as well talented diplomat, and whether he is warrior, it is to be proved by his management of
by
NATO.
circumstances, yes. Was he popular at home? Was he the favourite for the job, or how did he get the job? To making deals with the NATO elites? How do you get to be at that stage?
It's a really interesting question, because he encountered different crisis, and he managed to overcome all these obstacles. That's why he is called Teflon Mark, because every problems didn't harm him enough to make him lose his job as prime minister. So he encountered several...
So he was involved in some controversies back home, wasn't he?
Yes, that's right. However, he proved that he is capable of maintaining relations with head of other states good enough to make him the Secretary General of NATO. So I think it's this ability of not being conflicted with anyone too much, so he was compromised enough to be appointed to this important role in NATO.
Yes, having the Teflon nickname is not the first politician who has the nickname of Teflon guy. It's very useful in when you're leading a coalition with 30-odd members.
That's right, and just one specific example. When he was Prime Minister of Netherlands, he was making a lot of effort, a lot of moves to make military spending lower, because he had his own perspective, his own interest of balancing the books inside the Netherlands. However, and it was asked during his first press conference at the new position as Nato Secretary General, he changed his stance. He said it was a wrong move. He said that after Russian attack at Ukraine, everyone should change this view, and he fully approved the new politics of enhancing military spending inside NATO. So he is able to changing his opinions.
Yes, when events change, you change your viewpoint. It seems fair enough. I noticed when Jens Stoltenberg first took the job, he was a kind of young, kind of tall, very good-looking guy. And then over the years, especially with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, he became grey. Got older very quickly, it seemed. Whether that's fair or not, I don't know. It just seemed how he looked. The stresses on the job must be tremendous. How is Mark Rutte's personality going to cope with not just Russia, but all the various multi-front problems that NATO is faced with?
I believe that 14 years as Prime Minister of Netherlands is proof that he is able to maintain such stress. I believe that during, for example, this coalition government's negotiations, during elections, or during talks at NATO level, because as Prime Minister he participated in many such meetings. I think he is already familiar with this job he is going to do in the NATO.
And from obviously he just started more or less very new to the job. Is Russia going to dominate the rest of his term of office, do you think? Or does NATO going to have other problems on other southern front, the Atlantic front? What do you think?
So the basic scenario is that Mark Rutte will be at least 4 years as Secretary General, because this is the term. It can be prolonged, for example, as with Stoltenberg, who was prolonged as NATO Secretary General 4 times to 10 years. It was era of Stoltenberg. And I believe that in 4 years it is it is impossible that Russia problem will not be there with us. So in this perspective, I think that it will remain the main threat, the main risk, and the main task of NATO Secretary General.
Coalition warfare has these multidimensional problems to anyone who's leading a coalition, and it often seems that in war it's which coalition breaks first, collapses first. Do you think that Mark Rutte is a good diplomat, good Secretary General to paper over or to heal these fractures that are seemingly appearing within NATO itself? Slovakia, Hungary, that kind of...
So Mark Rutte would not be the person who decides. He is spokesperson of NATO, as well as the person who is steering decision-making process, who is chairing meetings during which these different viewpoints will be presented and decision will be, well, negotiated. So I think that his experience, his abilities are well suited for this role, and the question is what are his goals? Because as we discussed, he had different views as Prime Minister of Netherlands, and it is understanding. However, it is the question whether he aims at reaching these goals he announced now, but we don't have any proof to think that he isn't going to do it. And the question about his skills, I think he is one of the person with biggest experience among European politicians. So even if there are important obstacles and important threats at his way, well, Stoltenberg could do it, so I think that we can give this credit for Mark Rutte as well.
2001, 9th of September, 11th of September, the NATO Secretary General was Lord Roberts, British guy. How did he do when faced with this seemingly surprising crisis that just appeared?
So,
what was his predecessor's reaction, do you think?
Yes, back in 2001, this start of war against terrorism, of NATO war against terrorism, which was announced by United States of America.
Article 5 was evoked, was it?
Yes.
Invoked, rather.
So it was something that gave again the reason to NATO exist, because after Soviet Union collapse, well, NATO did its job, and there were nothing more to do. So for these years, it's paradox, but the war on terrorism made NATO alive. And now, when history go further and the times change, it's good because we have NATO, which is evolving towards better defense posture and deterrence posture. However, I think that NATO survived this time because of this this goal which united countries of NATO and this common enemy.
I mean, certainly NATO came in for a lot of criticism. It was called brain dead by President Macron at one stage, questioning the very existence of NATO. It's been going since the late 1940s. It's been promoting itself as the most successful military alliance. Is that accurate to say that, or?
I think it is. NATO is 75 years old. Its first enemy, Soviet Union, collapsed, so it's
won.
Yes, we won. And now NATO is, from our perspective, it's slowly, but it's evolving towards more robust defense spending, better defense plans, enhancing military mobility in Europe, because it's eastern flank of NATO, it's Central Europe, the main operational theater of nowadays risk and threat from Russia. So I think that we can say that NATO is the strongest and the most successful military alliance in history.
We can't forget Kosovo as well in the intervention there. In the late 1990s, has NATO gone back to its primary roots, the defence of Europe from the east, from the Soviet Union, now from Russia, led by America? And do you envisage NATO's horizons shrinking towards its European base rather than making these expeditions against terrorists in Afghanistan or the other side of the world?
So now NATO is shifting toward its old enemy, Russia. However, it starts to be more and more acknowledged that Russia strictly cooperates with China. China is called by Jens Stoltenberg, but as well as by a new Secretary General, Mark Rutte, main enabler of Russia war in Europe, because China is providing semiconductors, dual use, yes, and other sources, materials. So NATO needs to take into consideration Indo-Pacific as well. And it is realized in cooperation with 4 Indo-Pacific countries: Australia, New Zealand, Japan and South Korea. They were at the last NATO summit. But at the same time, the main focus of NATO is at our region, at Central and Eastern Europe and in Russia. But as these theaters, as these countries are connected and helping each other, NATO need to have in mind, and not only in mind, but in defense spending, in operational plans, this broader view.
Final question to you, Mr. Jaworski. How do you think that the new Secretary General will cope with these? He has to hit the ground running. There's no rest, no holidays. How do you think he'll cope with this new posture of Europe, especially mobilizing defense industries and the mentality of European societies?
So it is interesting because Mark Rutte even mentioned during his public speeches as Secretary General that asked about the elections in US, that he cooperated already both with Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, that he supports both sides, he considered them professional, and he even said that Donald Trump made a good job by threatening European countries and enhancing their military spending. So I think he proved by this that he is diplomat as well, not only politician, but as well very capable diplomat. And he has at least 4 main tasks to be done. And one is to create good cooperation of NATO with any winner of US elections. Another thing is to keep on enhancing military spending at balancing this internal interest of each country at, not spending so much with these requirements of mutual defense. So Jens Stoltenberg has some success in this, because from 3 countries that spent at least 2% of GDP at the beginning of his being Secretary General, now it's 23 out of total 42. Yes, he had 3 additional members as well. So Mark Rutte has these 2 tasks. One more is to create good cooperation between European Union and NATO. For example, and it is your question, at the in area of military industry. Because we have, for example, European Defence Fund, and it will be good to harmonize it with NATO spending and NATO.
And the final one, shortly, you outlined 3.
Yes, and the final one is, of course, Ukraine and stopping Russia.
Yes, not just Teflon, but armour plating as well. I think you need probably for a Secretary General.
I hope so.
Krzysztof Jaworski, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
So that's it for today. Do join us next time for How We Got Here.